Universal Casualty, Super Q,
los Miami Dolphins y tú, rumbo al Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, rumbo al Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, rumbo al Super Bowl. Son los Dolphins, nuestros Miami Dolphins, el team número 1 en toda la nación. Y son ellos orgullo de Miami y de todos los latinos en la capital del sol. Con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, rumbo al Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, rumbo al Super Bowl. Este año no me hablen de los Redskins, no me hablen de los Chargers, ni de los Dallas Cowboys, porque los Dolphins son número 1 y lo demostrarán al llegar al Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, rumbo al Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, rumbo al Super Bowl. Nuestra línea está mejor que nunca y nuestra defensiva fue siempre la mejor. Y es por eso que yo no tengo duda que los Miami Dolphins ganarán el Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, rumbo al Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, rumbo al Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins me voy para el Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins me voy para el Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins me voy para el Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins me voy para el Super Bowl.
Universal Casualty
Y Super Q, los primeros. Bueno, caballeros, todo el mundo que cante con nosotros. Dame una D, dame una O, dame una L, dame una P, una H, una I, una N, una S, que es lo que tenemos. Miami Dolphins. Me voy para el Super Bowl. 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 Me voy para el Super Bowl.
You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network.
There's a team Dolphin fans. Football is mighty rough. Winning gets awful tough. We're rooting for the Dolphins. Our mighty, mighty Dolphins. We're rooting for the Dolphins. Our mighty, mighty Dolphins.
Hello, Miami Dolphin fans, and welcome to the Same Old Dolphin Show, sponsored by BetUS, part of the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network. I'm Josh Katzker. With me today and every day is my brother from the exact same mother, Aaron the Brain. Aaron, say hello to the people.
Hello to the people.
All right. I'm back. What'd I miss?
Well, you missed it. I feel like a pretty good show. Me and Mike sat down. We talked about what we expect from this team coming into the Gauntlet. What would be
Gauntlet
acceptable.
time. Remember the old Nintendo game Gauntlet?
That's what I think of every time. I think, wasn't there like a character that like he's kind of like a stocky guy with carried around like a mace, like a ball and.
Well, I feel like wasn't a stocky guy pretty much describes like every Nintendo character ever, like, unless you're talking about like Metroid or Contra or those type of games.
Well, no, because I mean, you think back to like the original ice hockey game. One of the three characters was definitively not a stocky guy.
Yeah, there's this little skinny guy, and then you had like the stocky guy, and then you had like the fat guys.
Yeah,
I think like I remember the Soviet Union team was like all fat guys. They must have been eating good up there in the Soviet Union, but when Nintendo made the ice hockey game. But that's besides the fact. I thought you and Mike did a good show. I enjoyed listening to it and talking about the Texans game. And I got to say, you know, I was so upset that I couldn't be part of the show that day because I really wanted to talk about that game and you know, the Dolphins coming out of that game, because really I thought, when you look at that game, and I think you obviously you look at that game in two halves, right? There was the first half, and then there was after Teron Armstead got injured in the second half, which I was pretty, like, you really got to see the weaknesses of Coach McDaniel and this team exposed a little bit. But in the first half, when the Dolphins had everything going for them, it was the rare occasion where you sat down and you watched the Dolphins game and it was everything you wanted it to be. You wanted the Dolphins to go in there and completely dominate this team, because if they were able to do that, that is what a team that is a legitimate contender would have done. They would have gone in against the Texans. They would have just completely blown them out of the water. And that's what they did. And they did it on a game where, you know, offensively, they didn't even have their best stuff, really. The timing was off and there was some rust out there, and it wasn't a great performance, but it was everything that you would have wanted that team to do, to tell you that if this team is a contender, this is what they're going to do. They're going to boat race the Houston Texans. And that's exactly what they did. Which now means that we can sit here and look at this team as they prepare to enter the Gauntlet and go, okay, now we've got meaningful, relevant December football in front of us. And I think that's one of the things that is most exciting about what's going on with the season right now, because the Dolphins have had meaningful December football games in the past several years, but they were meaningful games in terms of, let's see if we can keep our season alive and squeak into the playoffs. Whereas now we're talking about meaningful football games that if the Dolphins start winning these games, you're talking about a legitimate Super Bowl contender. Now, we're not there yet. There's a long way to go before we're at that point. But the fact of the matter is, if the Dolphins can, in fact, go out there and win 2 or more of these upcoming 3 games, you are talking about a legitimate Super Bowl contender. And that's really exciting, because the Dolphins have not been in that kind of conversation in a really long time. To be involved in the conversation to the point that rather than getting flexed out of a Sunday night game, they're getting flexed into a Sunday night game for the first time against the Los Angeles Chargers. We're likely going to see them get flexed into Sunday night again the following week against Buffalo. That's not guaranteed. Could be a primetime game on a Saturday, but we're probably going to be sitting on an island playing that game against the Bills without any other games going on. And that's the kind of thing that happens when you're a relevant football team. And, for all of the imperfections and all of the perceived weaknesses that this team may still have, as a cynical, jaded Dolphins fan who co-hosts a show called the Same Old Dolphins Show, it's pretty exciting to have your team sitting there at 8-3 and going into these kind of big, exciting matchups that aren't just exciting for us as fans, but exciting for anybody who is a football fan. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. And we said coming into the season, this was billed as the best Dolphins team in about 20 years. And that's basically where we're at. To this point, they're basically on track with those early 2000s football teams, the ones that had Jason Taylor and Zach Thomas and Tim Bowens, and you had Ricky Williams running the football. Coming down the stretch, we're playing meaningful games in December to determine, can they win the division? Can they get a bye in the playoffs? Is this team a Super Bowl contender? Well, now we're in that position. It's been quite some time. It feels kind of different. Does it feel different because it's been 20 years? Or does it feel different because this is the best team that we've had in 30 years? Time will tell.
Yes, it certainly will. And it's going to tell pretty soon because we're diving right into a big game on Sunday at San Francisco against Kyle Shanahan, Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, Eric Armstead, the San Francisco 49ers. Pretty exciting stuff. We're going to be previewing that game here on the show today. But before we do that, just a reminder, if you haven't done so already, make sure you're following us on Twitter. I am at Amplified to Rock. He is at Aaron the Brain. That's at Aaron the Brain. The show is at Same Old Dolphins, and we invite you to download, rate, review, and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, anywhere that you get your podcast. I'm aware that the last episode didn't show up on SoundCloud. That's because I was not putting it together. I was not producing because I was taking care of family obligations. We'll try to get it put in there retroactively so you can still get that episode if you missed it on the main Same Old Dolphins Show feed, but it is on the Dolphins Talk feed. And of course, every episode of the Same Old Dolphins Show is also available on the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. So if you've not subscribed yet already, please do that. Turn on notifications so you're notified every time we go live. Shout out to everybody watching live on the I Am a Miami Dolphin Fan Facebook page and the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. Thank you very much. Take a moment right now, if you will, go ahead and like this video. We appreciate it. Like it. Share it with your friends. We appreciate it. Leave us a comment as well because we want to know how you're feeling about the Miami Dolphins. And of course, make sure you are visiting dolphinstalk.com each and every day. It's your one-stop shop for all things Miami Dolphins. Brain, here we go. Miami Dolphins at San Francisco 49ers. And this is a game. We're going to start on the offensive side of the ball because I think with the Dolphins on the offensive side of the ball, because I think this is probably the tastiest matchup for me, because you've got a Dolphins offense that excels in the middle of the field and creating space in the middle of the field. And you have a San Francisco 49ers defense that excels in shutting down space in the middle of the field. And so you've really got strength against strength in this matchup. And I think I am really kind of stoked to see how well this Dolphins team can perform against a defense like the 49ers. The Dolphins have a slight advantage in that when they went up against the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Steelers actually, outside of that first quarter, did a pretty good job shutting down the middle of the field for the Dolphins. So the Dolphins have had some experience with this, and now we're going to see if we can bounce back. The Dolphins have scored 30-plus points in, 4 straight games? And the 49ers haven't allowed a second-half point, I think, since week 7 or 8 or something like that. So something's got to give in this one, I think, and I am really really excited to see this matchup. So, Brain, how do you see this matchup between the Dolphins offense and 49ers defense? A defense, by the way, that is getting Eric Armstead back, while the Dolphins are more than likely losing Teron Armstead, at least for this game. He's out with he's got the pec injury, he's got the toe injury, and they have listed him officially as doubtful for the game on Sunday.
Well, I'm not feeling great about it. I mean, the lasting impression that we have of this team playing without Teron Armstead is them getting dominated by the Houston Texans defense. And prior to that, our impression that we were left with from Teron Armstead not playing were, I think, the last two games that the Dolphins lost, which were the Minnesota game and the game against the Jets. So in some respects, you can make the argument that maybe Teron Armstead is even more important to this offense than Tua Tagovailoa is. They're certainly neck and neck, and we'll kind of see what this offense looks like if he doesn't play. Even if he does play, he's going to be playing at far less than 100%, and it would be interesting to see what he looks like going up against Nick Bosa and this talented 49ers defensive line at like half or 70% strength. My gut tells me that even a 50 to 70% Teron Armstead would be a major upgrade over whether it's Greg Little or Brandon Shell or whoever we're going to play at left tackle.
Can't be Brandon Shell, right? We can't. Honestly.
I think it's got to be Greg Little, but I mean, how confident are you in Greg Little? I mean, this is.
Oh, I'm not. I mean, I'm not confident in that at all. But I mean, I guess I'm as unconfident as I am in Greg Little. I would feel better about him being over there than Brandon Shell, given what we witnessed last week.
Yeah, I don't think there's a discernible difference, except that Greg Little has maybe played, has had a little bit more experience playing that side. You at least know that Brandon Shell has done a solid job at right tackle. So like, don't have both positions suck. Put Brandon Shell over there. Maybe he does a serviceable job at right tackle, and then you do what you can at left tackle, and you just game plan away from it. And it probably limits you on offense, and it probably makes you a lot more predictable on offense as well, which probably plays into the hands of the 49ers. But at the end of the day, at a certain point, it comes down to just plain old football. And it comes down to man on man. Can you beat your guy? Can you win your matchup and make things happen? I think this is a really good test for Tua and this offense in general, because yes, do you want everything to be perfect and you want to be playing at full? Of course you want to be playing at full strength. The fact of the matter is a lot of times you get to this point of the season and you're not going to be, and you hope that you're healthy for the playoffs, but a truly great team can survive these kinds of things. So can the Dolphins find a way to win when they're not at full strength? Because we haven't seen that this year. When the Dolphins have been, when Teron Armstead has played and when Tua has played and finished the game, the Dolphins haven't lost a football game. Well, we may see what that looks like, and we're going to see it up against probably the best defense that they're going to play all year long. And I think it'll be an interesting matchup to see, can they still get the matchups that they want? Can they still get as much space? They're not going to have as much space in the middle of the field because the 49ers have two linebackers that are as good as anybody in the league at covering a lot of ground in the middle of the field. So are you able to stretch deep? Are you able to protect Tua long enough to allow him to test this 49ers secondary deep? Can you run the football to take the pressure off of Tua? And can you play a precise offensive game and mistake-free football? And then, we'll talk about the other side of the ball as well. But this might be the kind of game where, If you're looking for the Dolphins to score 30 points and the offense to carry them to victory, I don't think that's the game script for success for the Dolphins this Sunday.
Yeah. I'm really curious to see how they are able to adjust to playing without Teron Armstead. And this will be the first time actually that the Dolphins are without Armstead, but with Tua. The other games that Armstead missed were without Tua on the field. So I'm curious to see how that adjustment plays out and what are some of the changes that the Dolphins implement offensively, schematically to make up for his absence. I think if there's one, I guess, good thing about the situation is that the Dolphins have Mike McDaniel, who has shown that he is pretty good at figuring out how to put his team in the most advantageous position possible most of the time. When he's had the opportunity to scheme things up, he's done a pretty good job of figuring out how to make the best out of the team's strengths when there are significant weaknesses. The thing is, I mean, the opportunities that we really wanted to see it were the game against the Jets and the game against the Vikings, both games where the Dolphins pretty early on lost their starting quarterback. So the whole scheme went out the window. So we really don't know what this team looks like in a situation where they get punched in the mouth and, have a difficult time climbing out of it. I mean, the closest situation is that Baltimore game where the Dolphins were kind of off for the first part of that game and then came storming back in the second half to win. And so I'm just genuinely curious. I dare I say cautiously optimistic about how they're going to deal with that, just because McDaniel has shown that he seems to have a pretty good handle on scheming things up for his team and putting them in the best position, but remains to be seen how he's going to get out of this mess given the situation with Teron Armstead, Brand.
I mean, they got to double Nick Bosa, right?
You would think, right? You got to put another guy on that side of the line, right?
I mean,
you got to put Hunter Long in there and chip him a little bit, right?
As much as I can get away with, I'm putting Alec Gingold over there next to my tackle. I'm putting Durham Smythe there next to my tackle. I might even go as far as to say, like, I'm basically shadowing Nick Bosa with a tight end or a fullback. Just to, and maybe not every single play, but the majority of the time. Because if I'm the Dolphins, the one weakness you've got is the left. If you put Brandon Shell at right tackle and you feel pretty good about your offensive line except for left tackle, then you say, we like everything about our offense except for this one weakness. It happens to also be coinciding with one of the defense's greatest strengths. You just have to account for it. And you just have to say, look, this obviously limits what we do a little bit, but we're not going to let this one glaring weakness that is so obviously ready to be exploited by their strength. You can't let that be the reason that you lose. If that's the reason that you lose, that is poor coaching. Now, if you go and you scheme it and you're double teaming him and Nick Bosa still beats you, all right, well, at least you tried something. But if you go out there with the impression that we're going to put Greg Little at left tackle and we're mostly going to keep the same game plan, and then Nick Bosa comes out there and sacks 2 or 4 times, that's horrific. That
and I think another thing that you can point to is how the second half of that game against the Texans played out. Because you saw Mike McDaniel go, oh, we lost Teron Armstead, but we're going to keep going with the exact same game plan. And you saw it crumble before, we saw it crumble before our eyes. So there's no way that Mike McDaniel, with his reputation and the way he seems to manage football games, I just can't fathom the Dolphins not coming out there with some sort of a plan. Now, we've seen Miami Dolphins coaches run the same crappy offensive line out there and no plan for how to deal with it. But that was when Brian Flores was in charge of this place, and he's not anymore. This is Mike McDaniel's team. And I think, we've been saying a lot. It's a little too early to talk about whether or not we should continue to call this the Same Old Dolphins Show. But the fact of the matter is he's not the same old head coach. And so I think there's definitely going to be some adjustments.
Isn't it a little bit too early for that, considering
Yes,
our last?
It is. Yeah, because that's something I was listening to something. It might have been Mike and Ian on their show on Wednesday, and it was like I think Ian said something about this is not the same old head coach. It's not the same head coach. Something's different. And I'm like, well, I mean, each of the last 3 head coaches that the Dolphins have had, we've said that at some point during the first or second season that this is not the same old head coach. And
maybe not Joe Philbin.
Maybe not Philbin, but Gase for sure.
But Gase for sure, Flores for sure, Tony Sperano for sure.
Yeah. So we can't get too excited yet about McDaniel, but I mean, looking at how he manages things, I think you're starting to get a sense of where he's going to scheme things up and where he's not going to just let the same old thing play out, because he understands how to put his players in the best possible position. So anyway, I think this is going to be I think it's going to be an interesting game. It's going to be an interesting game and see if the Dolphins can finally get that run game back up and running. Again, they're going to have Jeff Wilson. They're going to have Raheem Mostert, 2 former 49ers going up against their former team. Really excited to see if the Dolphins can get that running game going against a pretty stout San Francisco defense. A lot of people will tell you, well, San Francisco hasn't really played a whole lot of juggernauts of offense out there in the world. And the one juggernaut of offense that they did play, Kansas City, put up 44 points on them. Okay, fine. But so let's see if the Dolphins can do that as well. The Dolphins have an opportunity to turn a narrative on its head. So let's go out there and do it on offense. We're going to talk about what the Dolphins are going to do on the other side of the ball against a banged up 49ers offense in just a minute. But first, I want to remind everybody that we are sponsored by Manscaped. So if you have not yet picked up some of the great below the belt grooming products at Manscaped, you really ought to do it. Head to manscaped.com. If you use the promo code Dolphins Talk, you're going to get a 20% discount and you're going to get free shipping. So a lot of really cool products over there. They've got the Lawnmower 4.0, which is their clippers. They've got shampoo, they've got body wash, they've got lip balm, they've got all of the liquid formulations for downstairs that you can use as well. Really excellent products. And I mean, you hear us talk about them all the time, and I'm sure you're going, they talk about this. I don't know. It seems like such a joke. It seems like a crazy thing. I don't know. It's so silly. Trust me. Go to manscaped.com, put in the promo code Dolphins Talk, save yourself 20%, get free shipping. And then when the products come, you can try them out. You can check it out, make sure it's everything that you want. And I'm telling you, you're not going to be disappointed. So manscaped.com, promo code Dolphins Talk, save yourself 20% off. And you know what? Your balls will thank you. Brain, on the other side of the ball, the Miami Dolphins are going to be on defense. And this is going to be, listen, when the 49ers offense is firing on all cylinders, it is pretty scary. But they're going to be without Elijah Mitchell, who's going on IR with an MCL issue. It sounds like there's a possibility that Deebo Samuel might not play in this game because he's dealing with a thigh injury. But even then, they still have Brandon Ayuk, they still have Greg Kittle, and they still have the Swiss Army knife that is Christian McCaffrey. Of course, they also have a weakness, and that weakness is their quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo. And if the Dolphins can continue to put pressure on the quarterback the way that they did against Kyle Allen, the way that they did against Jacoby Brissett, it feels like that is going to be the key to the Dolphins shutting down this 49ers offense, is harrying Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, well, I think the key is, like it is pretty much every week, it really comes down to getting them into tough down and distances. And this Dolphins defense, I think now that Bradley Chubb is here, really, really thrives even more than ever on third downs and being able to bring the pressure. And the fact that now they, at least have the guys where you feel like we can bring the pressure while only rushing 4, or maybe, we bring one extra rusher, but we don't need to like be running 0 blitzes out there just to get pressure on the quarterback. The Dolphins, with the ability to get pressure with 4 and keep Jimmy Garoppolo in the pocket and just force him into some bad throws. That's absolutely the formula for this defense having a great game. And I think this is a big test for the Dolphins defense because, the last 2 weeks, or the last 2 games, I should say, because there was a week off in between. The Dolphins defense has done a great job against really more traditional offenses, quarterbacks that aren't, running like Justin Fields. And now but you also didn't play world beaters. You played the Browns, who had some nice pieces, and I think that was impressive, and the Texans, who were garbage. So this is a huge step up. This is a big test because this is as healthy as the defense is going to be. Like, this defense is not going to get appreciably better the rest of the season. So there's no excuses now. You went out and you traded for Bradley Chubb. This defense needs to play at a very high level, especially in a game where you're going to be without Teron Armstead and you're saying, like, look, the offense might be limited. This is a game that the defense needs to win or at least keep you in. So this is a huge I'm more intrigued by what the defense does in this matchup than I am with what the Dolphins offense does, because I'm a little resigned to, like, the Dolphins are going to have struggles. They're playing a really good defense and they're without their left tackle, and we know they have no depth. But on the defensive side of the ball, what does this defense look like against a good offense in a big game on the road? To me, I'll learn a lot more about this team based off of what their defense does in this game than what their offense does.
Yeah, and it is definitely, I think, not to get too far into the gauntlet here, but I think the idea that you're going up against the 49ers and then you're going up against the Chargers, you get those 2 sort of warm-up games for the Bills and Josh Allen. I think that's a really, I
wouldn't call them warm-up games.
Not warm-up games, but it's like you're going up against really good offenses 3 weeks in a row. And so your defense is really going to be tested, and we're really going to find out what this defense is made of, just like we're really going to see what this offense is made of, particularly in this 49ers game against a really tough 49ers defense. So I'm looking forward I'm just really looking forward to it. It's an exciting matchup on both sides of the ball, and it's one of those things where it's what it's all about, man. It's what it's all about. It's exciting.
This is where the fun starts.
This is really where the fun starts, because there's every chance that the Dolphins could come into these games and win them, and like I said earlier, cement themselves as legitimate contenders, or they can go and lose these 3 games, in which case you got to go, well, are they all that we really thought they were?
So before we make our predictions, I want to ask you the same question that I asked Mike.
All right.
On the last show. And that is, coming into these 3 games, what is your expectation? How many games do the Dolphins need to win out of these 3 for you to feel like they are legitimate contenders? And how many games do you think that they're going to win?
I think they've got to win at least 2 of them. If they are legitimate contenders, they've got to win at least 2 of these games. How many do I think they're going to win? I don't know. Ask me after Sunday.
Well, that's cheating.
I would say, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you how many I think they're going to win.
This
but
is
first,
posturing right now.
But before I tell you that, I got to do something else. And you know what that is? I got to check my pulse.
Let me check your pulse if you're not fired up.
That's right. It's time for another Miami Dolphins pulse check, where we find out how you are feeling about your Miami Dolphins. We also will tell you how we are feeling about the Miami Dolphins. But tell us in one word, if you're watching live on the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel or the I'm a Miami Dolphin fan Facebook page, go ahead and put it in the comments right now. What is one word to describe how you are feeling about the Miami Dolphins at this moment in time? We've already got some comments coming in, Brain, so I'm going to share them with you. And I promise I'm eventually going to get to my thoughts.
Still
Josh
thinking about it.
Ritter says confident. Nicholas Aslani says electrified. Jackie Albanese says fantastic. Greg Fries says anxious. 1017 man says aplomb, which I love. Great word. Aplomb is an excellent word. B. George says championship. And Mike Jackson, I wonder if it's the Mike Jackson, says hyped. Love it. Let's go over to the Twitter machine and see some of the responses that we've gotten over there, because we do have some of these as well. Here we go. Shane Klingerman says hopeful. Mike from Dolphins Talk says nervous. Rich Miller says injured. Doug's GT 500 says apprehensive. Russell Grace says AFib. It's kind of two words, I guess, but Fishy says effed. You know what I mean? Effed. Dolphin Dino 65 says good. Jesse Bakaitis says psyched. And Derek Poirier says nervous. I'll tell you how I'm feeling. You ready for this?
Let's do it.
Okay. I have to tell you, Brain, that I've been going back and forth on this myself, but at the end of the day, I am feeling pretty pumped. I am pumped because this is what it's all about. This is the time of year where you get meaningful football games. You got the opportunity to cement yourself as a real contender. I'm pumped. It's like this is the kind of thing that we've been missing out on for so many years, with this Dolphins team being so mediocre for so long, that these games have, even the big games where you're talking about they're meaningful football games in that, yes, they're potentially keeping you in the playoff race, but this was a team that you always knew that even if they made the playoffs was not going to go very far. Whereas this team, if they win these games, look out. The sky becomes the limit with this team. So, Brain, I am feeling pumped. How are you feeling?
Well, hard for me to really change my opinion after 3 days. And we did the show Monday night with Mike, and we did the pulse check, and I basically echoed your sentiments. I basically said the same thing. Like, I have basically a range of emotions. I'm not just excited. I'm not just anxious. I feel all of that. But the prevailing emotion is excitement because of what you just said. We're in this situation. Like, that feeling of anxiety, that's what it's all about. Like, you don't feel that anxious and that terrified coming into this game if there are no stakes. But when you get to December and there are real stakes, that's when you feel that. And that's when you feel alive as a fan. And that's kind of the drug that drives us back, that we've been chasing for so long as Dolphin fans. And it feels like forever. So, yeah, I'm excited. I'm pumped. I'm nervous. I'm anxious. I'm curious. I'm open-minded. I'm hesitant.
That's 2 words. That's 2 words.
No,
Open-minded
it's
is
not.
2 words.
No, it's not. It's a compound word.
Nonsense. Look at you with your English.
It's a compound word. Ask any English teacher.
Fine.
At any rate, the prevailing emotion is excited.
Good. Good. I'm glad we cleared that up. So, I mean, generally speaking, the pulse
So
of
how many
Miami
games are the Dolphins going to win in
and
this
I'm going to
gauntlet?
tell you exactly how many games the Dolphins are going to win out of these 3 coming up. But first, I want to tell you about our friends at True Classic. Head over to trueclassic.com and use the promo code DolphinsTalk. You're going to save 25% off your order. You're going to get some of the best shirts on the market. They've got some incredible deals going on right now anyway as they continue through Cyber Week. Incredible shirts, T-shirts, Henleys. I've got a True Classic Henley on under my Dolphins hoodie that I'm wearing right now. A lot of really great products over there at True Classics. Amazing T-shirts, fantastic. They've got hoodies, they've got Henleys, they've got sweaters, they've got jackets, they've got pants, they've got everything over there at trueclassic.com. So head to trueclassic.com, put in the promo code DolphinsTalk. You're going to save 25% off of your order. You can get free shipping if you spend $100 or more. And you're going to look really good afterwards. And your significant other or your F buddy or whoever it is that's out there that you're hooking up with, they're going to think you look really good too. So trueclassic.com, promo code DolphinsTalk. Brain, it's time for me to answer your question. How many of these games do I think the Miami Dolphins are going to win? And the answer that I'm going to give you, 2. The Dolphins are going to win 2 of these games. And it's going to start on Sunday in San Francisco.
Woo!
Starting on Sunday in San Francisco. Dolphins are going to San Francisco, and they are going to get themselves a big win. I mean, here's this. I want to share this stat that from Chris Kaufman. You all know Chris out there. If you're a Dolphins fan, you know who Chris Kaufman is. And he put out this stat that I just think is phenomenal. This season, Brain, you ready for this?
Ready.
You familiar with this stat?
I don't know.
Tua Tagovailoa has quarterbacked 8 drives this season while trailing in the second half. First of all, that's an amazing stat, right? That Tua has only been in for 10 drives in the second half of games this season where the Dolphins have been behind.
Was it
That's
10
amazing.
or was it 8?
What?
Did you
10.
say 10?
10 drives. On those drives, those 10 drives where Tua Tagovailoa was the quarterback and the Dolphins were behind in the second half of a game this season, Tua is 34 of 42 for 477 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. He has been sacked 1 time for -7 yards and has 2 runs for 21 yards. That is a 154 passer rating. The Miami Dolphins offense has scored a touchdown on 8 of those 10 drives.
So what you're saying is that when we're trailing in the second half on Sunday, that the Dolphins have the 49ers right where we want them.
That's right. And Tua Tagovailoa is going to lead this team to victory on Sunday against the 49ers in a close, somewhat scrappy game. But guess what? The Dolphins are hitting 30. Give me the Dolphins in this one by a final score of 31-27, with the winning touchdown being caught by Mike Gesicki.
Okay. So I am not feeling great going into this game.
Oh,
The 49ers are playing every bit as good as the Dolphins are playing coming into this game. The 49ers have this game at home. The last time the Dolphins played on the road, they almost got beat by the Chicago Bears. Prior to that, they almost got beat by the Detroit Lions. This Dolphins team has not been the same team on the road as they've been at home, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. So I think
what's
it's a
the
huge
key
test
word
for
in
the
those
defense.
2 games against the Lions and the Bears? What's the key word?
That they won? Or
Almost.
that they almost
They
lost?
almost lost.
I would say that the key words were the Lions and the Bears.
Oh my.
I need to see the Dolphins play better on the road against a really good team. And the fact that they're coming in without a key piece, and all we've seen of this team without Teron Armstead is the offense not look good. Granted, a couple of those games were played without Tua, and Tua was pulled in the game against Houston, but he was pulled in the game against Houston because he was getting destroyed. And it became evident that we were putting him unnecessarily at risk because we were so ill prepared to play with Teron Armstead. So are we going to be more prepared? Sure. But you're also going up against a significantly better team, a significantly better defense. Do I think the Dolphins are going to get blown out? No. I think the Dolphins are better. I'll be very, very worried if the Dolphins get blown out. If the Dolphins get blown out, it kind of changes the perspective of what this team looks like big picture. If they can at least hang with San Francisco, and I'm not saying you take a moral victory, because look, when you make the moves that the Dolphins have made coming into the season and mid-season, there's no such thing as a moral victory. You're playing for a championship. So there's not going to be, I'm not going to be happy if the Dolphins lose a close game. But I won't necessarily be concerned if the Dolphins lose a close game, given everything going into it. I think the Dolphins can hang tough in this one. I just don't know that they've got enough on the road without Teron Armstead to beat what I think is a legitimate Super Bowl contender in the San Francisco 49ers on their home turf. I think the Dolphins hang in there, but they fall short. Give me the 49ers putting up a late touchdown to kind of make things look a little bit more lopsided than they are. 49ers win it 24-16.
So the Dolphins, let's say the Dolphins lose this game 24-16. What does that do to your excitement about this team going forward?
It doesn't change it at all. Because of these three games, personally, my expectation is you really only got to win one. If you win one, then you've got three games against teams that you're better than. That you've got a legitimate shot at still going 12-5. You still have a legitimate shot at winning the division, and everything is still in front of you. But so if you lose this game, it doesn't change. Like, you can win one out of these three games, and I'm still feeling pretty good about the Dolphins. It matters how you look in those games, but the fact that Teron Armstead's not playing in this game, again, not a moral victory at all if we lose. There's no such thing as a moral victory for this team, and there shouldn't be for any Dolphin fan, given the way they've built this roster and the way they've kind of gone all in. But you've got a built-in excuse. If you can play a road game against a Super Bowl contender close to the end, and you're playing without one of the most important pieces on your offense, you should feel good going forward. Now, if you lose this game and then you lose all of a sudden to the Chargers, now all of a sudden the anxiety really starts to ramp up, because you're looking at a very real possibility of losing three in a row and all of a sudden being 8-6. And now all of a sudden your playoff hopes are now in the air. That's a different story. But you lose a close game at San Francisco, I'm not really sweating it. Yeah.
It's they're all pieces of the overall narrative, right? There's not one single thing, right? There are multiple pieces here. If you lose this game to the 49ers, obviously it's not a big deal in and of itself, but it does become potentially the first domino in these other dominoes to fall behind that, because then it just puts that much more on that Sunday night football game against the Chargers. Oh, by the way, speaking of that Sunday night game that the Dolphins have against the Los Angeles Chargers, I will be joining Mike Oliva from right here at dolphinstalk.com to do a live watch along. I will not be joining him at his house for this one, but we'll be doing it I'll be here in the studio. He'll be at his place, and we will be sitting together watching live as the Miami Dolphins take on the Los Angeles Chargers. So we invite everybody to watch along with us on the I Am a Miami Dolphin Fan Facebook page and, of course, the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. So make sure you are subscribed to both of those things. So, yeah, it's a pretty big game. I think of the 3 games that the Dolphins have, this is the, I guess, for lack of a better term, this is the most losable in that it doesn't mess things up if the Dolphins lose this game. Obviously, if the Dolphins go out to San Francisco and they get blown out, that's a problem. But at the end of the day, it's one game, and this non-conference loss to San Francisco, if that's what it turns out to be, you think it's going to be. I don't. I think they're going to win this game, but regardless, if the Dolphins should lose this game, it still sets them right up in pole position. If they win that game against the Chargers the following week, that sets them up to go into Buffalo. And if they can win that game at Buffalo and sweep the Bills, they would find themselves with the same record as the Bills, most likely. And again, having the tiebreaker and being in first place. So, not the end of the world if the Dolphins don't win this game on Sunday, but of course you want them to win. So I'm looking forward to it. It's this is it. This is the big time stuff. This is really why you watch football, right? Obviously you want to be in the playoffs, and that's all the stuff that you want. You want to get to the playoffs, you want to win the Super Bowl, and that's all good too. But that stuff is, at the end of the day, that's rare. At least for the Dolphins, it's rare that you get to find yourself in that situation. This is the situation that you could potentially find yourself in every year, which is having an opportunity to really legitimately be one of those top teams and in that national conversation. And that's where the Dolphins are right now. If they can go in, get a win this Sunday, stock is rising, folks. The stock is rising. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Same Old Dolphin Show. Thank you, as always, for listening, whether it's in podcast form or watching, whether you're watching on YouTube or the I'm a Miami Dolphin Fan Facebook page. We appreciate you. We'll be back on Monday to recap the Dolphins game against the 49ers. We're also going to be recapping the United States of America taking on the Netherlands in the round of 16 in the World Cup, baby. USA, let's go. I was fired up, Brain. Were you fired up when we beat Iran?
Yeah, I was a little bit fired up for that.
Got to be fired up when the U.S. beats Iran in anything. Let's go. USA, baby. I was like Hacksaw Jim Duggan marching around my living room. Oh, USA!
You had a 2x4 over your shoulder?
With an American flag on it, baby. Let's
Awesome.
go. Love the World Cup. I mean, listen, I'm not here to convert anybody to soccer, because if you're not like super into soccer, whatever. But the World Cup is absolutely thrilling. The last group stage games where they do 2 games going on at the same time, and you got a goal in one game influencing what's happening in the other. It's amazing. It's great, great stuff. High drama. Absolutely love it. I am a soccer fan. I love the World Cup. It's probably the greatest sporting spectacle on earth. I just absolutely love it. And, but you know what? That's all going to have to take a back seat on Sunday, because once the United States dispatch the Dutch and move on to the quarterfinal, probably against Argentina, maybe against Australia, but probably against Argentina, we're going to put that to the side, and we're going to focus on the Miami Dolphins taking on the San Francisco 49ers and watching Mike McDaniel take on Kyle Shanahan. It's going to be a good time. That's coming up this weekend. I'm fired up. I hope you're fired up. We're fired up. We're going to be back to talk about it on the next episode of the Same Old Dolphin Show. But until then, take care of yourselves and each other. And as always, go Dolphins!
F buddies.